and welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Here's a quick look at what's lined up for you on the show tonight. Our cover story tonight is about the India-Australia partnership. It has been a rather eventful 24 hours for the two sides as Prime Minister Modi held a bilateral meeting with the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese during his visit to Australia. The Indian Prime Minister has said India-Australia ties are in T20 mode now. That's just a sample of how far the partnership has come. On Gravitas tonight, we take a closer look at the key takeaways from the bilateral meeting, how Australia and India have a lot in common, the opportunities that lie ahead for the two sides, and how this visit once again strengthens the partnership. Also on the show for you tonight, Russia's Prime Minister has signed a set of agreements with China during a trip to Beijing. We tell you all about the Russia-China bilateral pacts, why they are significant, and decode the message that they send out. The Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida says the country has no plans to become a NATO member but acknowledges plans to establish a liaison office in Japan. China naturally is not happy with the move. We tell you all that you need to know. France has now banned short-haul flights to cut carbon emissions, but will the plan work? Does recycling release microplastics? We tell you what a new study says. All that shortly, but first to Pakistan, where fast-paced developments have been trickling in over the last couple of hours. Is the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf breaking apart? Is Imran Khan's party nearing its end? And I'm asking these questions because in the last 48 hours, Imran Khan's party has received two major setbacks. The first one was the resignation of Shireen Mazari, Pakistan's former human rights minister and a close aide of Imran Khan. On Tuesday afternoon, she resigned after being arrested over 4 times. And 24 hours on, another senior party leader has resigned, Fawad Chaudhry, Pakistan's former information and broadcasting minister. Not only has he resigned from the party, but is also planning to take a break from politics. And this is the tweet that he put out this evening. Let me quote, with reference to my earlier statement where I unequivocally condemned the 9th May incidents, I have decided to take a break from politics. Therefore, I have resigned from the party position and parting ways from Imran Khan. And the timing of the resignation is significant. It comes just 8 days after this video emerged, showing a scared Fawad Chaudhry running for his life after he spotted police officials outside the Islamabad High Court. This happened moments after the court had ordered his release in connection with a case in which he was arrested for inciting violence. And Shireen Mazari, by the way, went through something quite similar during one of her arrests. She was taken away in a Vigo, a vehicle usually used by members of intel agencies without a number plate. Not just that, approximately 20 PTI leaders have also quit. More than 20. This includes Mahmood Maulvi, a senior PTI leader and member of the National Assembly. And then we have Amer Mahmood, Sanjay Gangwani, Kareem Gabol, They all left the party citing the same reason: the violence that followed after Imran Khan's arrest. And this was followed by the resignations of former Minister Iqbal Wazir, Balochistan Assembly member Mohammad Mobeen Khan, and former PTI parliamentarian Malik Jawad Hussain. And this, by the way, begs the question: have these leaders resigned under duress? Were they blackmailed into leaving the party? And these are questions that the PTI must definitely be pondering upon. And it has all the reasons to do that. Have a look at this report. Pakistan's Defence Minister Khwaja Asif has said that his government is mulling banning Imran Khan's party for the violence that unfolded earlier this month. You have to listen to this.
ये स्पॉन्टेनियस कथित तौर पे नहीं है, कथित तौर पे ये बेसाख्ता नहीं हुआ, कथित तौर पे ये एक प्लान के तहत सब कुछ हो रहा था। इस बैकग्राउंड में इम्कानात हैं और ज़रूर इसका फैसला कोई नहीं हुआ, लेकिन इसका जायज़ा ज़रूर लिया जा रहा है कि पार्टी के ऊपर पाबंदी लगा दी जाए।
And so I ask again, are the PTI leaders resigning out of their own volition, or are they under pressure from the establishment? Well, Imran Khan certainly thinks that they are being targeted. Listen to this now.
फायदा उठाते हुए जो कोर कमांडर का घर जलाया गया, उसका फायदा उठाते हुए पहले से प्लान बना हुआ था। और मेरा जिस वक्त भी, ये मैं आपको बता दूं, जिस वक्त भी इसके ऊपर इन्वेस्टिगेशन होगी, ये साबित हो जाएगा कि ये प्री प्लान था सब कुछ। सो इसलिए उसके फायदा उठाते हुए एक ऐसा क्रैकडाउन है जो मैंने पाकिस्तान की तारीख में कभी नहीं देखा। सिर्फ यही नहीं कि सिर्फ तहरीक इंसाफ के कारकुनों को अंदर डाला है, सपोर्टर्स को, सोशल मीडिया के लोग जो अपने तौर पे पार्टी में भी नहीं, जो पीटीआई के लिए ट्वीट करते थे, उनको भी अंदर डाल दिया। सारी लीडरशिप अंदर डाली हुई है। और निकलने का सिर्फ एक तरीका है कि एक वो जादू के लफ्ज कह दो, वो जिस तरह होता था ना, खुल जा सम सम। आप जादू का लफ्ज कह दें कि जी मैं तहरीक इंसाफ में नहीं हूं, तो आप रिहा हो सकते हैं।
And to discuss this and more, I am being joined by Anas Malik, our Pakistan Bureau Chief. Also with me on the broadcast is James Schwemlein, non-resident scholar at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Coming to you first, Anas, just piece together for us what we know at this point. There is yet another addition to the long list of leaders who are parting ways as far as Imran Khan's support is concerned, and also the setbacks that the PTI has received. What more can you tell us at this point?
Well, absolutely, Molly. It's like people from the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf are being made to jump ship following the events of the 9th of May. And we've seen that happen, that over 20 PTI leaders have been made to jump ship or have jumped ship on their own. And those who do not Mazari was in just 2 weeks, and eventually she said that she bended, and she said that fine, fair enough, I'm leaving the party, and now she's back home. Yesterday, the court had ordered to release Shah Mahmood Qureshi, and despite of the release orders, he was arrested right after his release. So it's like everyone is being forcefully made to jump the ship. With that being said, it looks like there's an organized dismantling process of the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf that is being done, that might or might not be orchestrated by the powerful Pakistani establishment. With that, these leaders continue to sing just one tone or one tune, and which is that they continue to condemn the events of the 9th and the 10th of May. Over 20 leaders as of today have resigned and left the party, and not just the party, but left politics altogether, because they believe that in case if they end up being turncoats against the most popular leader of the country right now, then their political prospects would just die going forward. Molly?
Right. Stay with me, Anas. Let's also get in a reaction from James at this point. James, what do you make of what's happening with the string of leaders quitting Imran Khan's party. Are they afraid of being targeted like their leader? Are they being forced to quit the party? Are they jumping ship? And what do you really make of this power equation at this point on the ground in Pakistan?
I think one of the features of politics in Pakistan is that it's not really ideological. These parties are coalitions, based on loyalty or other interests. They're not based on, political party platforms or an agenda. So the PTI, as other parties have been, was assembled prior to the 2018 election. In a process that wasn't quite as visible as what we're seeing as it's disassembled now. But it was, slowly kind of accumulated through political leaders from regions, through members who disassociated with rival parties. And what we're seeing now is the reverse. Is we're seeing the party being fractured. Now, there's no question that at the center of its assembly, prior to the 2018 election, was the Pakistan Army and the intelligence services. They were looking for an alternative leader to the kind of established Muslim League and People's Party leadership that had ruled the country for the previous 10 years. And they found that in Imran Khan, and they assembled a coalition around him. What we're seeing now is the reverse. Unfortunately, although this last week or so has been very visible and I think obvious in terms of what's occurring, it's not a new trend. Just 6 months ago, a spokesperson for Imran Khan was detained and allegedly, humiliated and tortured while in custody of the state. Pressure against PTI leaders who have been outspoken either against the army or against things that the army prioritizes has been accumulating even prior to when they were forced from power just over a year ago.
Right. Anas, what we're looking at is not just the possibility of Imran Khan's party breaking apart, given the string of resignations, but also the party being banned altogether in light of the statement that's been given out by the country's defense minister, where he says that the government is mulling banning the PTI. What more can you tell us about what he said, and what exactly will the government look at? How soon do we expect a decision?
Well, today there was a federal cabinet meeting. While we have seen statements coming in from the government of these nature, and this is not the first time that the defense minister has made such a statement, Molly, but it would not be an easy process out to ban a political party. We've previously seen that during the PTI time, they had tried to ban the Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan, the TLP, and that ban was challenged in the Supreme Court as well, because for that, the organization has to be listed as a proscribed organization, and then the banning process from the Election Commission has to follow. And under the Election Commission Act, it would not be an easy ride out, because then they would have to provide credible intelligence inputs and those annexes that basically justify the ban. Otherwise, it would be seen as a politically motivated move to which the Supreme Court would intervene and shoot it down. Therefore, for now, these statements coming from the defense minister remain such statements, and it has not been actively pursued, at least what we know, on official agenda of the federal cabinet as of today. Molly?
Right. James, what do you make of the defense minister's statement talking about the possibility of banning the PTI? As Anas pointed out, this is not the first time that such a statement has been made, but also personally for Imran Khan, these setbacks, these resignations coming at a time when he has been upping the ante against the army. How do you see this playing out for him?
Yeah, so the idea of disqualifying political leaders from facing election is also not new in Pakistan. In 2017, prior to the 2018 election, then Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif was disqualified by a ruling of the Pakistan Supreme Court under citing Constitution, basically alleging corruption and other allegations that the court ruled on. The last 5 prime ministers of Pakistan have all ended up in prison after they left office, or either in prison or under detention pre-trial for an extended period of time. This is unfortunately a job that I'm not sure why people want, Why would you want to sign up for a job governing this challenging country at a time when clearly the prime minister is a scapegoat for many of the things that are going on? Unfortunately, we're seeing this play out again. At this point, I think it's very likely that Imran will again be disqualified. He had, of course, the court had ruled that he was disqualified from seeking re-election. Then a court had ruled that, and then it was overturned in the Supreme Court. Wouldn't be surprised if that petition comes forward again. And frankly, it's part of the game, the managed democracy that we see. No party seems to be able to stay in power for more than 4 or maximum 5 years in a row. Perhaps lest they accumulate too much power and could to accumulate that may challenge the establishment.
All right. Remains to be seen how all of this really plays out for Imran Khan and for the people of Pakistan as well. James, we are leaving it there for the moment. Also thanking Anas, our correspondent, for helping us with all of those updates.
Thank you.
And we're shifting focus for now. There are not a lot of things that India loves more than cricket. And you know what they say? Love for cricket makes for great friendships. I am talking about the Indian Prime Minister's visit down under, and T20 became a fine metaphor for the new level of friendship between India and Australia during Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's 3-day visit, which ended earlier today.
भारत और ऑस्ट्रेलिया के ऐतिहासिक संबंधों का विस्तार इससे कहीं ज्यादा बड़ा, और जानते हैं इन सारे संबंधों का सबसे बड़ा आधार क्या है? सबसे बड़ा आधार है म्यूचुअल ट्रस्ट और म्यूचुअल रिस्पेक्ट.
A day after the rock star welcome from the Indian diaspora, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi today received the Guard of Honour at the Admiralty House in Sydney, following which Prime Minister Modi held a bilateral meeting with the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. And what was discussed during the meeting? Regional security, economic ties. The two leaders, in fact, signed a migration deal aimed at easing travel for Indians going to Australia for education or business. There were also MOUs signed on mobility, green hydrogen. Also at the meeting were India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, and the National Security Advisor, Ajit Doval. Prime Minister Modi and his Australian counterpart held a press conference following the bilateral, during which Albanese announced the opening of a new Australian consulate general in Bengaluru, which will be Australia's 5th diplomatic presence in India. A day earlier, remember, Prime Minister Modi had announced a new Indian consulate in Brisbane. The Australian Prime Minister also mentioned the two leaders wanted an early signature on the Australia-India Comprehensive Cooperation Agreement. The Australia-India Comprehensive Cooperation Agreement is essentially a free trade agreement which will dissolve many levels of restrictive practices, not to mention red tape. And speaking at the press conference, Prime Minister Modi said that the two leaders discussed strategic cooperation in the sectors of mining and minerals. They also sent out a strong and united message to separatists.
ऑस्ट्रेलिया में मंदिरों पर होने वाले हमलों और अलगाववादी तत्वों की गतिविधियों के संबंध में हमने पहले भी बात की थी और आज भी हमने बात की है. भारत और ऑस्ट्रेलिया के सौहार्दपूर्ण रिश्तों को कोई भी तत्व अपने विचारों या अपने एक्शन से आघात पहुंचाए, ये हमें स्वीकार्य नहीं है.
Just a quick reminder here. Sydney had cancelled an event organised by Sikhs for Justice in the lead-up to the Indian Prime Minister's arrival in Sydney. You see, this is one of the many things cricket teaches you, the power of unity in a team, and India and Australia are working as a team to resolve problems and create a new future, be it with regard to checking common competitors, read China, or in terms of economic cooperation. And none of this is really surprising. You see, India and Australia have a lot in common, more than just cricket or the love for yoga. The two countries, after all, share history. They were both colonies of the British Empire, and currently they are a part of the Commonwealth group of nations. India and Australia are also strong, vibrant, secular democracies. The two countries have common interests and shared values, be it climate action or the shared goal of a prosperous Indo-Pacific. And these serve as very important foundation stones for closer cooperation. In fact, in 2009, two countries became strategic partners. In 2020, this was upgraded to Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. India and Australia are core partners, and now the two countries are looking to work more closely than ever. Australia, whose current largest trading partner is China, is trying to diversify its export market, and this is where India comes in, the bright economic spot during a global downturn, with a burgeoning middle class and 85 million people with a middle to high income. Roughly 3 times Australia's total population. Australia's Dhaka University will be the first foreign university to open a branch campus in India. There are already 77,000 odd Indian students studying in Australian universities. The Indian community in Australia is 780,000 plus strong. The growing clout of this community was on full display during last evening's event. And coming back to trade, currently India is Australia's 6th largest trading partner, and the fact that Australia is seeking to move India upward in the chart, not just in terms of trade, but also in other levels of engagement, was quite visible in the reception. The Indian Prime Minister received the reception in Sydney. Be it from his Australian counterpart or the media, it was all out in the open, and the messaging was quite clear. Financial Review published from Sydney this morning was in awe of Prime Minister Modi. In fact, the front page read, "Namaste Australia, Modi rocks Sydney." This was the 6th meeting between Prime Minister Modi and Albanese in the last 1 year. And in the Indian Prime Minister's words, the partnership between the two countries is in T20 mode.
इस साल भारत में होने वाले क्रिकेट वर्ल्ड कप के लिए मैं प्रधानमंत्री अल्बनीजी और सभी ऑस्ट्रेलियाई क्रिकेट फैंस को भारत आने के लिए आमंत्रित करता हूं. उस समय आपको क्रिकेट के साथ साथ दिवाली की चमक और धूमधाम भी देखने को मिलेगी.
And let's now shift focus to China. This afternoon, it received a special guest, the Prime Minister of Russia, Mikhail Mishustin, the highest ranking official to visit Beijing since Moscow sent troops to Ukraine last year. He arrived in Beijing on Wednesday afternoon for a 2-day visit aimed at strengthening ties. And the timing of the visit is quite interesting. It comes less than a week after the G7, a summit which, for all practical purposes, revolved around the actions of Russia and China. You see, most G7 declarations singled Russia and China out as the biggest troublemakers, be it the war in Ukraine, nuclear proliferation, economic coercion, military maneuvering. Russia and China were accused of all these charges. In fact, the bloc discussed imposing new sanctions against Russia and formulating strategic approaches in dealing with China. The draft joint communiqué mentioned efforts to reduce reliance on China in the global supply chain and preventing Russian commodities from reaching other countries. Immediately after the summit, Russia and China hit back at the bloc, accusing it of smearing their image. The Russian foreign minister, in fact, said the G7 was indulging in its own greatness with an agenda that aimed to deter Russia and China. Meanwhile, China's foreign ministry accused the G7 leaders of hindering international peace and said the group needed to reflect on its behavior and change course, quote unquote. This was last week. This week, the Russian Prime Minister has reached Beijing. And if we go by the optics, this visit seems to be aimed at countering the display of unity that the G7 put up last week. If there were any doubts about this, some remarks made by the Russian Prime Minister settled them all. He met with the Chinese Premier and spoke in detail about bilateral unity. Let me just quote his exact statement. Today, relations between Russia and China are at an unprecedented high level. They are characterized by mutual respect of each other's interests, the desire to jointly respond to challenges, which is associated with increased turbulence in the international arena, and the pressure of illegitimate sanctions from the collective West. As our Chinese friends say, unity makes it possible to move mountains. And this was followed by a statement from the Chinese Premier. He talked about how Russia and China's business cooperation is at an all-time high, how bilaterally trade is on a year-on-year increase of over 40%, and how the scale of investments between the two countries is also increasing. Listen to this.
So far this year, pragmatic cooperation between China and Russia has shown a good development trend. From January to April, you can see that our bilateral trade has quickly broken through more than $70 billion. This is a year-on-year increase of more than 40%. The scale of investment between the two countries is also continuously upgrading. Strategic large-scale projects are steadily advancing. Local and cultural exchanges have also been heating up.
And these statements were followed by agreements. The two leaders inked several economic pacts. This included an agreement to deepen investment cooperation in trade services, a pact on export of agricultural products to China, and a memorandum of understanding on sports cooperation as well. All these agreements are aimed at strengthening bilateral trade. In fact, the Global Times says that trade between the two countries could hit the $200 billion goal by the end of this year. And at the same time, the state media outlet has said that this cooperation should not be associated with the ongoing Ukraine crisis. Let me just quote the most telling excerpt. China and Russia moving closer on economic cooperation should not be associated with the ongoing Ukraine crisis, nor should be seen as China skewing towards certain party. China has the right to choose who to work with, as long as the collaboration does not violate international norms, and such a choice will not be disturbed by noise from any third party. You see, the message is loud and clear. No matter Western sanctions, no matter Western pressure campaigns, Moscow and Beijing will not relent. If anything, forums like the G7 will only bring the two countries closer. For those watching this show from Dhaka, I have a question for you. Are you planning to tie the knot? If it is for the first time, you have nothing to worry about. But if it is your second or third time, then you will have to shell out some extra bucks. Why is that? Because Dhaka South City Corporation will levy a tax on marriages. Let me tell you what this is all about. In Bangladesh, would-be brides and grooms need to pay 100 takas to get hitched. That is little less than $1. But for those seeking polygamy, it gets a little bit costlier. The more the wives, the higher will be the fee. For a second marriage, Dhaka men will have to pay 5,000 takas, that is a little more than $46. For a third wife, it is 20,000 takas, as in $185. And for a fourth wife, the fee would be 50,000 takas, meaning $467. And for a Muslim majority country like Bangladesh, the tax imposition is a progressive move. It is supposed to deter men from taking multiple wives. But my question is it a deterrent enough? If a person is willing to have another marriage, will he shy away from paying a couple of bucks extra? If Dhaka is imposing a tax, why not go all in? Why not slap a fee that will actually make someone think twice? And that's not the only concern here. There is more. The tax does not apply if the husband is dissatisfied with the first wife. If she does not check all the boxes of an ideal marriage, that is, if she is mentally challenged or cannot carry a child, the groom gets a pass. He can go ahead and get married by simply paying 200 takas or $1.8. And why is this tax on polygamy so lopsided? Can it really discourage polygamy? Or is it simply the government's tactic to increase revenue? You see, so far it has only been announced on southern Dhaka. Northern Dhaka does not have any such plans as of now. The tax is supposed to come into effect from next fiscal year. But will it make any difference is the big question. Japan, the only country among the G7 that is not a part of the NATO, has said that it still has no plans to join the organization. But the Prime Minister, Fumio Kishida, has acknowledged plans to establish a liaison office in Japan. And China, naturally, is not happy with the move. Our next report telling you all that you need to know.
The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, also known as NATO, has 31 member countries, including Spain, UK, US, Italy and France. And the latest addition, Finland. Japan, which stands among 7 of the world's most advanced economies, is not a part of the NATO. But now it's been established that it doesn't want to be a member. Today, Prime Minister Fumio Kishida said that Japan had no plans to become a NATO member, but acknowledged the plan to open a liaison office in Japan, which would help facilitate consultations in the region. This liaison office would be the first of its kind in Asia. China has called out the NATO for this move. The Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said that Japan should be extra cautious on the issue of military security.
NATO is a regional organization. Therefore, if NATO breaks through regional restrictions and expands to other regions, what we want to say is that the Asia-Pacific does not welcome group confrontation, does not welcome military confrontation. Japan has a history of aggression, so it should be extra cautious on the issue of military security and do things that are conducive in maintaining regional peace and stability.
There are a number of factors at play here, and a number of reasons why this is significant. First of all, the geographical boundaries. NATO is a security alliance of countries from North America and Europe, whereas Japan is in East Asia. And then there is the aspect of what the Japanese constitution states. It says that the nation will not maintain an armed force, while the country now has a self-defense force. Japan can't deploy forces to another nation if it is attacked by another country. This defeats the NATO's basic principle that if a country is attacked, member nations will unite to fight back with the right of collective self-defense. Japan, meanwhile, has a close partnership with NATO called the Partners Across the Globe. 9 countries are members of the partnership, including Japan, Australia, New Zealand, Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Mongolia, Colombia, and the Republic of Korea. In 2022, Kishida became the first Japanese prime minister to join a NATO summit. This led to the Western Alliance considering Japan as a partner nation, in a move to further boost cooperation with NATO. Reports say Kishida plans to attend a NATO summit in July. On the sidelines of the summit, Kishida and NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg plans to map out a new Japan-NATO security cooperation document called the Individually Tailored Partnership Program. Reports say the program will work on space and disinformation response, and China, of course, will be watching these moves very carefully.
Shifting focus to Turkey now. 24 hours back, it busted an espionage ring. A total of 11 people were detained, and they all apparently belong to Mossad. For the unversed, Mossad is Israel's national intelligence agency and the second largest espionage agency in the world after the CIA. It is responsible for intelligence collection, covert operations, and counter-terrorism. And unlike other security bodies, Mossad's purpose, objectives, roles, missions, powers have not been defined in any law. So the Turkish authorities have busted an alleged espionage operation by the Mossad. What sort of an operation is this? Reports say they were suspected of spying on Iranian targets for Israel. And the authorities have identified 15 suspects. 11 of them have been arrested, 4 others are on the run, and they were all part of a 23-member ring of operatives. According to reports, this investigation lasted for over 18 months, and in this period, the investigators discovered that the cell had targeted one company and over 23 individuals who had commercial relations back in Iran. The authorities used a threatening package sent by the cell to one of the targeted individuals to uncover the operation. The leader of the cell has been identified as Selçuk Kokaya. He was allegedly recruited by the Mossad through a member of the Gülen movement, an Islamist fraternal movement which Turkey considers a terrorist organization. A picture said to be of Kokaya shows a bearded, middle-aged man. He allegedly met with Mossad agents in Europe who then gave him 5 test assignments before recruiting him to establish a ring. Remember, this is not the first time the Turkish intelligence agency has claimed to have exposed a Mossad spy cell within the country. In December last year, 7 individuals were arrested for spying on Palestinians. Turkey had said that these suspects were assisting Mossad in conducting online defamation campaigns and making threats against Palestinians. And a year before this, in October 2021, a Mossad network of 15 Arabs was reported to have been caught by Turkey's National Intelligence Organization. The report came just weeks after Hamas-affiliated media claimed that Palestinian spies were working for the Mossad in Turkey. So clearly, Mossad's operations in Turkey run deep and wide. And why would they not? Turkey, after all, is the biggest hub of migrants in the region, be it Syria, Iraq, or Afghanistan. They all flee to Turkey in search of a new life. Some end up going to Europe, others end up being recruited by terror outfits, and some are also recruited to fight proxy wars in the region. So Israel's secret operations are only aimed at protecting its national security interests. And it's official. France is banning short-haul domestic flights. Passengers cannot take flights for distances that can easily be traveled by trains. And by that, I mean up to 2.5 hours long journeys. Up to 2.5 hours long journeys. Lawmakers had voted on the matter 2 years ago, and now it's finally coming into effect. Why is France doing this? You might have guessed it already. To save the planet. You see, the French want to cut down on their carbon emissions. To put things in perspective, let's just compare emissions from different modes of transport. Domestic flights are the most polluting. Every passenger contributes 133 grams of carbon dioxide for each kilometer traveled, and non-carbon dioxide emissions remain 121 grams per person. So the total comes out to be 254 grams. The figures are slightly lower for long-haul flights at 102 and 93 grams, but they are concerning nonetheless. For cars, it is 171 grams. If you are driving solo, in buses, 104 grams per passenger. In domestic trains, the CO2 emissions are 41 grams per person. And as you can see, trains are the most eco-friendly means of traveling. But just how effective is the French government's latest move? How is it going to impact businesses and the French economy overall? Is France choosing the planet over profits? Or is this ban just symbolic? Because you see, the curbs only extend to a few cities. Residents cannot fly between Paris and regional hubs like Nantes, Lyon, Bordeaux. Other short journeys like Paris to Mediterranean port city Marseille or Strasbourg still remain free of bans. You see, train services must meet certain conditions to replace flights. Number one being the train services on the same route must be frequent and timely. Number two, they should be well connected enough to satisfy the passengers who would otherwise be flying. Number three being the trains should have the bandwidth to accommodate more passengers. And number four, people making such trips should be able to make same-day return journeys, having spent 8 hours at their destination. The truth of the matter is only limited train services meet these criteria, and experts say the curbs will not have much effect on carbon dioxide output because they are sparingly applicable. And some are calling for real and significant solutions instead, those that will actually bring about some change. The original proposition seemed a lot more promising. It aimed to scrap flights where train rides of under 4 hours existed. But this was later shortened down to 2.5 hours. Why is that? Because some lawmakers objected, and so did Air France KLM, one of Europe's biggest air carriers. The curbs were bound to affect businesses. Lesser planes would be flying out, airlines would be losing revenue, so the 4-hour limit was almost reduced by half. Now, the common people will be making cutbacks, but what about the ultra-rich who fly in their private jets? Celebrities and billionaires city hop in their luxury jets, and they are single-handedly responsible for a large share of carbon emissions. A report from T&E, the European Federation for Clean Transport, has revealed that private jets are up to 14 times more polluting than commercial flights. They are 50 times worse than trains. But France is more focused on commercial flights, that too pretty half-heartedly from what it seems. Will the bans bear any fruits? Our next story is about zombies. But unlike zombies that you find in horror and fantasy stories, this story is about a zombie drug. This drug is called by various names. It's known as tranquedope, a flesh-eating drug, skin-rotting drug, and the zombie drug. But the question is, why is it being called these names? And that too, such scary names. Before I move on, have a look at these visuals. They have been doing the rounds on social media for quite some time now. In these images, you can see people walking strangely, to say the least, almost like a zombie. Let me just say this very clearly. WION cannot independently verify the authenticity of these images and videos shared on social media. But these videos are definitely worrisome. They have surfaced from the US in the times of their intensifying drug abuse crisis. But now this seems to be taking a toll on the UK as well. The drug's arrival in Britain has been noted by toxicologists. The Birmingham Toxicology Lab has noticed a strange peak in test results that was later identified as xylazine, or the zombie drug. And what's more concerning is that these drugs go undetected in normal drug tests, meaning that there are special drug tests that need to be carried out to detect this drug. thus spiking warnings that many cases of zombie drug consumption could actually be going undetected. So what is the story of this drug? The zombie drug is scientifically called xylazine. It is basically an animal tranquilizer. It was developed in the 1960s, and the purpose was to help veterinarians to treat cows, horses, and sheep, among other animals. How does it work? By stimulating the animal's muscles to relax. The purpose essentially is to numb their pain. But when human beings consume this drug, it leaves them in a zombie-like state. It rots their skin, it impacts their lungs, and causes infected sores. Now, the question that arises is, why are human beings using this drug? Why are they putting their life in danger despite such severe health hazards? And the answer is one-worded: relaxation. This drug calms the human nervous system. It can knock you out for hours, and hence humans consume it to feel better and more relaxed. In fact, according to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, xylazine is classified as a central nervous system depressant. So when human beings consume it, its effects last longer, and they do not feel the need to get another shot of drugs for a longer period of time. Though it's not clear as to how long the effect actually lasts in human beings. In animals, one shot can last up to 4 hours. Humans are increasingly consuming the zombie drug with opioid, the very drug that has created a furore in America. When combined with opioids, the impact of zombie drug is next to irreversible. And this leads to deaths. Among the severe impact, as a part of the severe impact of the drug, blurred vision, disorientation, body-wide inflammation, weakened immune system, open skin ulcers, breathing issues. In fact, in cases where infection from this drug reaches human bones, doctors have no choice left but to amputate. This drug was approved for animals, but humans are misusing it, and it is causing havoc across the US. After having first been abused by people in Puerto Rico, Philadelphia is currently the epicenter of the country's xylazine crisis. Maryland is reporting an increase in deaths. The UK just reported its first death, all because of this zombie drug. And with that, the question that arises is, how big is the xylazine or zombie drug problem? Because not just the UK or the US, but the world might have just witnessed the tiniest tip of the growing iceberg of the zombie drug overdose. What do you imagine prisons to be like? Scary, dark, dingy? Well, not always. A prison in Bolivia has offered its inmates a chance to walk the ramp in a fashion show. The inmates will be showcasing clothing stitched by them. Our next report getting you all the details.
Women in colorful outfits, donning artistic hats. A fashion show with a lineup of models. Can you guess where this extravagant event is taking place? In a city center? An open art theater? Well, far from it. What you're seeing is the view of a jail, a women's prison. Bolivia has made news with its one-of-a-kind fashion show. This is not a low-budget fashion walk. The event has been sponsored by the Entrepreneurship for Freedom program, a program funded by several local and international foundations. Through this fashion show, the Obrajes Women's Prison aims to showcase the skills of its inmates, skills which would help prisoners choose a profession after they are released. The women showcased their self-stitched traditional Andean garments.
My work, I'm going to model. I'm working on those knitting, crocheting shawls. One shawl takes me a month, then 28 days. I'll finish all the work by myself. It's not easy.
What seems like just a one-day event can change a prisoner's future. Like we said earlier, these activities are seen as work assignments. that help an inmate show and gain skills which they can use in the future. Most prisons teach an array of skills like carpentry, assembly, food service, laundry service, and kitchen management. But let's talk about fashion in particular. What are the advantages of learning more about fashion? Well, it helps develop creativity. Fashion designing helps a person express themselves through art. While experimenting with fabrics, textures, and styles, a person gets to create unique designs, which also helps in boosting confidence. Fashion demands technical skills. A person gets to learn skills like pattern drafting and sewing. This is crucial for designing and producing garments. And then there is the most crucial advantage: building career opportunities. Learning fashion designing, styling, or production opens multiple doors. Prisons, after all, don't have to be places where dreams die. They can also be places where new dreams are born and new skills are learned.
And on that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas Tonight. We are leaving you with Gravitas images. Thanks very much for watching.